Hi, this is Jen Rubin, and this is Jen Rubin's Green Room. Contrary to what you may have heard, this is not a solemn day. This is not a sad day. This is not a day to regret. None of those things should be the reaction to the conviction on 34 criminal counts against one Donald J. Trump. This is a moment of triumph. This is the rule of law doing its will. This is 12 brave, attentive, conscientious Americans sitting in judgment. This is what it means to have an equal justice system under the law. And that is nothing but an unalloyed victory for democracy and the rule of law. Now, what is deeply disturbing, what is sad, what is sobering, is that an entire political party is now attacking, delegitimizing the trial. They are, in doing so, they are calling the judge and the jury illegitimate, corrupt, confused. I don't know what their argument is, but it is entirely inappropriate. Whatever you thought about the decision to bring the case, or whether you like a state court criminal indictment and prosecution or not, the people in that courtroom, the judge, the jury, did their duty. And it is reprehensible for members of the United States Congress, for law professors, for any lawyer to impugn the integrity of the judge and the jury. And there really should be consequences for this. Lawyers are officers of the court. They have sworn an obligation to uphold the legitimacy of courts and of court decisions. You don't have to like them. You can criticize them. You can say, I wouldn't have convicted. You can say, well, I think there are grounds for appeal. But what you cannot do, what you should not do as a lawyer, is to impugn the integrity, to call it corrupt, to call it unprincipled, to say it doesn't matter, to say that these people are somehow the target of retribution, or other people should be the target of retribution. Now, unfortunately, for now at least, the White House, the Attorney General, has chosen not to say anything about this. They must. Their obligation is to uphold the law of the United States, the Constitution, and they have an obligation to reinforce the legitimacy, the sanctity of our judicial system. So I would certainly hope that the White House, the Biden campaign, the Justice Department come out and say something, not about the verdict, but about those who are attacking a judge and a jury. If this is allowed to go on, you will not have Americans willing to sit on juries. You will not have fair and impartial judges. So it is crucial that we not simply brush this aside and say, well, it's just the Republicans being Republicans. No, this is proof positive, in case you had any doubt, that these people are beyond reproach, that they are not fit to hold power at any level of government. Now, let's also consider the response from Trump at Trump Tower. To say he was incoherent, to say he was babbling, to say he was unhinged would not be an exaggeration. That would barely skim the surface. And the more he does this, frankly, the better for those of us who think he should be incarcerated as punishment. Because again, what he is doing is not only demonstrating a lack of remorse, but he is once again involved in threatening and attempting to delegitimize a court that has treated him fairly, that has rendered its verdict. And Judge Merchan can take this all into account in sentencing. Yes, he can. It may not be a crime, but it could well be a violation of the gag order. And moreover, it goes to Trump's character. It's almost an oxymoron, isn't it? Trump's character. The judge is allowed to take into consideration factors like the contempt citations, like his threats to ignite violence, like his participation in January 6th, like his civil conviction for raping and defaming E. Jean Carroll, like his judgment in New York for inflating real estate values, like the $2 million fine and the closing down of his charity for improperly using donors' funds. He can take into account all of that because all of that goes to Trump's character. Now, he can also take into account the severity of the crime, that this went to an attempt to manipulate, to fraudulently obtain a presidency in 2016. So as Trump continues to dig his grave, both legally and politically, we should keep the focus on two things. First of all, such a person is manifestly unfit for the presidency. Do you want someone who's ranting and raving like that, entirely unhinged, anywhere near the Oval Office? Do you want someone who has been convicted of 34 felonies and who has been indicted in 3 other cases in the White House? If the mere thought of that seems preposterous to you, then you have to redouble your efforts to explain to the American people that this is no ordinary election. This is no ordinary candidate. This is no ordinary party. They have to be stopped. And the other takeaway from this is that while this state court system is working as it should, our federal court system is in meltdown. We have a chief justice who is unwilling to reel in one of his fellow jurists, who has shown his bias by flying an insurrectionist flag over his home, who lied in public statements, as indicated by the New York Times sequence of events, who refuses to meet with members of Congress to discuss a need for ethics reform. That court is in disarray and disrepute. And it is also the same court that has put its finger on the scales of justice, or maybe it's put its hand on the handbrake to stop the prosecution, the lawful, important, critical, justifiable prosecution of Donald Trump for staging an insurrection. That court is frankly a disgrace. And members of Congress, Dick Durbin, I'm looking at you, have got to respond. They need to hold hearings. They need to put that ethics bill that they did pass through committee on the floor. And they need to consider other reforms of the court. And what happens if that Supreme Court grants him some form of absolute immunity or makes it virtually impossible for a prosecution to take place before the 2024 election? Well, several things should ensue from that. Hearings, a mandatory ethics bill, and frankly, it's up to the American people, not only at the ballot box, but in peaceful, massive civil expression. We had the March for Our Lives. We had the Women's March. These were enormous political statements. They weren't tied to a specific piece of legislation. They were meant to galvanize public opinion, and they worked. They helped elect Democrats in 2018. They eventually helped elect Joe Biden in 2020. So the response to the Supreme Court has to be not only from members of Congress, but it has to be from all of us. Join a march for democracy. That's what we need. We need an expression that that court has gone so far off the reservation that it is no longer acting like a court, that it has lost the support, the credibility, the stature that is necessary in order to uphold the federal criminal justice system and the federal constitutional system. Thank goodness we have a federal system where the state courts and the federal courts operate in tandem but separately. Otherwise, Donald Trump would never be convicted of anything. And let's not forget, of course, Eileen Cannon, who is, again, behaving disgracefully, refusing to rule on motions, entertaining ridiculous motions. She is not an unbiased, competent judge. Whatever her motivations are, she is not giving the prosecution, the American people, fair justice under the law. And this comes back to something that I've complained about a lot, and that is the United States Department of Justice. Merrick Garland, who diddled around for far too long before filing any kind of criminal prosecution involving Donald Trump and who has refused to authorize a motion to recuse Judge Cannon, is not the kind of leader we need at this point. He is not the leadership that the times demand. His job is to be the chief prosecutor for the American people. Do we think he's performing that job ably? Do you think he is aggressively enforcing the rule of law against Donald Trump? I don't think so. I think he has bent so far over backwards to not appear political that he has, in fact, abrogated his responsibilities. So, God willing, Joe Biden will get a second term, and God willing, Merrick Garland will retire someplace nice. Perhaps a college campus would be a good place for him to be. So, in the meantime, remember, when you hear a politician, a lawyer, a law professor demeaning Judge Merchan, demeaning those jurors, you should think this person is inappropriately, objectionably compromising the rule of law. The rule of law depends upon our willingness, whether we like it or not, to recognize the results of a verdict rendered with care, with authority, and frankly, from a jury that the defendant helped select. That jury was not the prosecutor's jury, was not the judge's jury. Donald Trump helped select that jury. So the least he can do, the least all of us can do, is support and defend those people. So we have our work cut out for us. The trial is not going to stop the Republicans. It's not going to stop Donald Trump. It's not going to stop the whataboutism media. It's not going to stop the Justice Department's equivocation. Only you can send Donald Trump and the Republicans packing. And that's why this election is really the election of your life. It's the most important election in United States history. And it has grave consequences for the United States, for democracy, and for the rest of the globe. So enjoy this triumph of the rule of law, but double down on your commitment to defend it and to defend democracy. If you like this program and you like our other programs, please tell your friends. They can listen and follow on Spotify, YouTube, or Apple Podcasts. All they have to do is click right there, and they can enjoy this program. Thank you. Bye-bye.